My parents are furious I didn't consult them about buying my house because they planned, as I found out later, that my sister, her husband, and their 3 kids would move in with me. So I said no and cut all ties with them. And if your family is making financial decisions about your life behind your back, you need to hear this story. I'm Linda Garcia, I'm 30 years old, and I just bought my first house. After 5 years of saving every single penny, skipping vacations, eating ramen for dinner, more nights than I care to admit, I finally had enough for a down payment on a beautiful 3-bedroom house in a quiet neighborhood, $450,000. It was my dream home, hardwood floors, a kitchen island I'd fantasized about for years, and a backyard where I could finally have the garden I'd always wanted. The day I got the keys, I was on cloud 9. I remember sitting in my empty living room, just staring at the walls that were finally mine. No landlord, no lease agreements, no wondering if I'd have to move again in a year. This was it. This was independence. This was everything I'd worked for since graduating college. I thought my family would be proud of me. I thought they'd celebrate this huge milestone with me. I was so naive. The first sign something was wrong came 3 days after I moved in. My phone rang at 8 p.m., my mother, Mary Garcia. I answered expecting congratulations, maybe some excitement about when she could come see the place. Instead, her voice was cold, almost angry. "Linda, we need to talk. Why didn't you consult us before making such a big decision?" I was confused. Consult them? About buying my own house with my own money? "Mom, what do you mean? This is my house. I saved for it. I qualified for the mortgage on my own." "This affects the whole family, Linda. You should have thought about Jennifer's situation before you went ahead with this." Jennifer, my older sister. Why would my house purchase affect Jennifer? "I don't understand what Jennifer has to do with anything, Mom." "You will. We're having a family meeting this Sunday. Be there." She hung up before I could ask any more questions. I stood in my new kitchen, holding my phone, feeling like I'd been punched in the stomach. What did she mean this affects the whole family? What situation with Jennifer? My sister had her own apartment, her own life with her husband Michael and their 3 kids. What could that possibly have to do with me buying a house? The next few days, the questions started coming. First from Dad, Robert Garcia, calling to ask about the house details. How many bedrooms? Is there a yard? What's the school district rating? Then more calls from Jennifer herself, asking if I had a garage, if there was storage space, if the neighborhood was safe for kids. Every question made me more suspicious. Why did they all suddenly care so much about the specifics of my house? I'd been looking at properties for months, and none of them had shown this level of interest before. Something was definitely going on, and I had this sinking feeling I wasn't going to like what it was. That's when I discovered their secret plan. It started innocently enough. Jennifer called on Thursday, asking if she could come by Saturday to see the new place. "I want to see what my little sister managed to pull off," she said with a laugh. It seemed normal, sisterly even. I was actually excited to show someone the house. Saturday came and Jennifer arrived with a measuring tape. A measuring tape. I should have known right then that this wasn't a casual visit. She walked through every room, not admiring the finishes or asking about my decorating plans, but measuring closets, measuring bedrooms, even measuring the garage. "This would make a great playroom for the kids," she said, standing in what I'd planned as my home office. "And this bedroom back here is perfect, quiet, away from the main living area." I followed her around, getting more confused by the minute. "Jennifer, what are you talking about? Playroom for what kids?" She was in the master bedroom now, checking the size of the walk-in closet. "Oh, this closet is huge. Michael and I could definitely fit our stuff in here, and you could use the smaller bedroom. It actually works out perfectly." My heart started pounding. "What do you mean, Michael and you? Jennifer, what's going on?" She turned to me with this look of surprise, like I was the one being weird. "You know, when we move in next month, where will the kids sleep when we move in?" The world stopped. Move in? Who said anything about moving in? "Jennifer, I never said you could move in. I never even suggested it. What are you talking about?" Her face changed then, from surprise to something colder. "Linda, don't play dumb. Mom and Dad explained everything. My lease is up next month, and this house is perfect for all of us. You've got the space, and we need somewhere to go." I felt like I was in some alternate reality. "You need somewhere to go? You're adults with jobs. You can renew your lease or find another apartment." "Why would we do that when you have this big house all to yourself? Come on, Linda, this is what family does. We help each other." Help each other, right. Because apparently, buying my own house meant I'd automatically signed up to house my sister's entire family, without anyone bothering to ask me first. The family meeting was an ambush, Sunday dinner at my parents' house, except it wasn't really dinner. It was an intervention designed to steamroll me into accepting a decision they'd already made about my life. I walked into that dining room thinking we were going to have a normal family meal, maybe discuss whatever this weirdness was with Jennifer. Instead, I found myself sitting across from a united front. Mom, Dad, Jennifer, and her husband Michael, all looking at me like I was the problem that needed solving. "Linda," Dad started, in that voice he used when he thought he was being reasonable, "we need to discuss your housing situation." My housing situation? What about my housing situation? I bought a house. I'm living in it. Situation resolved. "Not quite," Mom said, sliding a folder across the table. "We've been doing some planning." I opened the folder and nearly choked. Floor plans. Floor plans of my house, with room assignments written in my mother's handwriting. Master bedroom, Jennifer and Michael. Room 2, kids. Room 3, Linda. Office space, playroom. Even my garage had been reassigned as additional storage for Jennifer's family. "What is this?" I asked, my voice shaking. "It's the logical solution," Jennifer said, like she was explaining something to a child. "My lease is up in 3 weeks. The kids are settled in their schools here. Your house has plenty of space for all of us." "But it's my house, and your family," Michael spoke up for the first time. "This is what families do for each other. You help out when someone needs it." I looked around the table at these people I'd loved my whole life, and I realized they weren't seeing me as a person with my own life and choices. They were seeing me as a solution to Jennifer's housing problem. A solution they'd figured out without ever once asking what I wanted. "So let me get this straight," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "You all planned that Jennifer's family would move into my house. The house I saved for, that I'm paying the mortgage on, that I bought specifically to have my own space for the first time in my life, and nobody thought to ask me first? We didn't think we needed to ask, Mom said. Jennifer needs help, and you have the means to help her. It's obvious. Obvious. It was obvious to them that my achievement, my independence, my financial sacrifice for 5 years should automatically become their solution to someone else's problem. How long? I asked. How long what? Jennifer replied. How long would you be staying in my house? They all looked at each other. Nobody had an answer. Because they hadn't thought that far ahead. In their minds, I guess, this was just the new arrangement. Indefinitely. Well, until we get back on our feet, Jennifer finally said. And when will that be? More silence. And what about expenses? Utilities, groceries, maintenance? We figured you're already paying those things anyway, Michael said. It wouldn't be much different. Wouldn't be much different, except for 5 additional people living in my house, using my electricity, eating my food, taking up my space, bringing their chaos into the peaceful sanctuary I'd worked so hard to create. And what do I get out of this arrangement? I asked. You get to help your family, Dad said, like that should be enough. Jennifer helps with housework. The kids bring life to the house. I don't want kids bringing life to my house. The words came out louder than I intended. I don't want housework help. I want my own space. I want the life I planned when I bought this house. The temperature in the room dropped about 20 degrees. Jennifer's eyes filled with tears. I can't believe you're being so selfish, Linda. I thought I could count on my sister. Selfish, there it was. The word they'd been building up to this whole time. Because wanting to live in my own house that I paid for was selfish. Because not wanting to be financially responsible for 5 additional people was selfish. Because having my own dreams and plans for my life was selfish. You have 3 children and a husband, I said to Jennifer. You're both employed. You're capable adults. Why is your housing situation my responsibility? Because that's what families do. Mom's voice was rising now. We take care of each other. We sacrifice for each other. I can't believe we raised you to be this self-centered. I worked for 5 years to buy that house, 5 years of 60-hour weeks, of not taking vacations, of living in a studio apartment and saving every penny. I did that so I could have my own place, my own life, my own independence. That's not self-centered, that's self-respect. Independence, Dad said, the word like it tasted bad. That's what's wrong with your generation. You think independence is more important than family. In this case, yes. Yes, I do. The silence that followed was deafening. Jennifer was openly crying now. Michael was glaring at me like I'd personally destroyed his children's futures. My parents looked at me like they didn't recognize me. Finally, Mom spoke, her voice cold and controlled. If you don't reconsider this decision, Linda, there will be consequences. Don't expect any help from us anymore. Don't expect to be included in family events. Don't expect us to support you when you need something. And what will people think? Dad added. When they find out you left your sister and her children homeless because you wanted to play house by yourself? Homeless? I stood up from the table. Jennifer isn't homeless. She has an apartment. She has options. She's choosing not to renew her lease because she thought she could just move into my house without asking. We're your family, Jennifer sobbed. What kind of aunt are you? What kind of sister? I looked around that table one more time at these people who had raised me, who I'd loved unconditionally my whole life, who were now trying to emotionally manipulate me into giving up everything I'd worked for. And I realized something that broke my heart, but also set me free. They had never respected my autonomy. They had never seen me as an independent adult, capable of making my own decisions about my own life. In their minds, I would always be the family member whose resources and choices existed to serve the family's needs, not my own. The kind of sister who has boundaries, I said quietly. The kind of aunt who believes adults should take responsibility for their own lives. The kind of daughter who won't be manipulated into giving up her dreams because other people didn't plan properly. I walked out of that house, and I didn't look back. The drive home from that disastrous family dinner was a blur of tears and rage. I sat in my driveway for 20 minutes, staring at my house, my sanctuary that my family wanted to turn into their free boarding house. That's when the clarity hit me like a lightning bolt. This wasn't just about the house. This was a pattern I'd been blind to my entire life. Growing up, I was always the responsible one. When Jennifer needed money for college textbooks, guess who Mom and Dad asked to help out with her graduation gift money? When Jennifer's car broke down, who got volunteered to share rides and gas money? When Jennifer and Michael's wedding went over budget, who got guilted into contributing to the family fund to make their dream day happen? Me. Always me. Because I was responsible, because I was financially stable, because I didn't need as much since I was single. They'd been planning my life around their convenience for years, and I'd been too conditioned to say yes to notice. But this house thing was different. This wasn't about helping with an emergency or contributing to a special occasion. This was them literally trying to take over my life, my space, my financial future, without even asking my permission. They'd made plans for my property, assigned rooms in my house, decided my destiny, all while assuming I'd just go along with it because that's what family does. Sitting in that car, I made a decision that would change everything. I wasn't going to be their backup plan anymore. I wasn't going to be the family ATM or the solution to everyone else's problems. I was going to be an adult with boundaries, even if it meant losing the family I'd always loved. The first thing I did was change my locks. All of them. Because of course my parents had keys to my house for emergencies, they'd said when I'd given them copies the day I moved in. But emergency to them apparently meant whenever we decide your space should be used for someone else's benefit. I called a locksmith Monday morning and had every lock changed. New deadbolts, new doorknob locks, even a new garage door opener code. It felt symbolic, like I was literally locking out the toxic control they'd had over my life decisions. Next, I blocked them, all of them, Mom, Dad, Jennifer, even Michael. On my phone, on social media, on email, everywhere. I knew that if I left even one channel open, they'd flood it with guilt trips, manipulation tactics, and emotional blackmail. The flying monkeys were already starting to circle. My Aunt Carmen called Tuesday night. "Linda, honey, your mother is so upset. She says you're breaking the family apart over some misunderstanding about the house." Misunderstanding? Right. Aunt Carmen, there's no misunderstanding. They planned for Jennifer's family to move into my house without asking me. When I said no, they tried to emotionally manipulate me into changing my mind. That's not a misunderstanding. That's a boundary violation. But Jennifer really needs help, mija. And you have all that space, I hung up, because even my extended family had been recruited into the Convince Linda to Sacrifice Herself campaign. My cousin Rosa texted Wednesday, "Can't you just let them stay for a few months? Family is everything." Uncle Luis called Thursday. "Your parents raised you better than this, Linda. Reconsider." Each flying monkey that contacted me just strengthened my resolve, because it proved that my entire family saw me the same way, as someone whose life existed to serve other people's needs. None of them asked how I felt. None of them acknowledged that I'd worked hard for my independence. None of them seemed to think I had the right to make decisions about my own property. I informed my workplace about the situation too. I work in tech, and harassment can happen anywhere, including at the office. I told my manager and HR that I was dealing with some family drama and there might be attempts to contact me at work. I didn't go into details, but I wanted them to know, in case my family tried, to circumvent my blocking by calling my office. The security cameras were the final touch. I had a system installed that covered my front door, back door, and driveway. Because I knew my family well enough to know they wouldn't just accept my boundaries. They'd show up. They'd try to guilt me in person when the digital manipulation didn't work. I was right. The first attempt came Saturday morning, exactly 1 week after the family meeting. I was in my kitchen making coffee when my phone buzzed with a motion alert from my security system. My parents' car was in my driveway. I watched through the app as Mom and Dad got out of their car and walked to my front door. Dad carried what looked like a peace offering, my favorite pastries from the bakery downtown. Mom held a potted plant, probably thinking a gift would soften me up. They knocked, then they rang the doorbell. Then they knocked again, louder. "Linda," Dad's voice carried through the door. "We know you're in there. Your car is in the driveway." "We brought breakfast," Mom added, like carbs would solve everything. "We need to talk about this like adults." I sat at my kitchen table, drinking my coffee, watching them through the security app. It was surreal, seeing my parents standing on my porch, looking confused and frustrated that their adult daughter wasn't answering the door in her own house. "Linda Maria Garcia," Mom's voice was sharper now. "You open this door right now. We didn't raise you to act like this." Using my full name like I was 12 years old. Even in their attempt at reconciliation, they were treating me like a child who needed to be corrected, not an adult who had made a decision they didn't like. They stayed for 45 minutes of knocking, calling my name, trying to peer through windows, even walking around to the back door. At one point, Dad tried his old key, the one I'd had changed, and I watched him jiggle it in the lock with increasing frustration. "She changed the locks?" I heard him tell Mom. "She actually changed the locks." "Against her own family," Mom replied, and even through the door, I could hear the hurt and anger in her voice. They finally left, but not before Dad left the pastries on my doorstep and Mom left the plant by the door. I waited until their car disappeared around the corner before I went outside. There was a note tucked under the pastry box. "Linda, we love you and we want to work this out. Family means forgiveness. Please call us." Mom and Dad. I threw the note away and brought the pastries and plant inside. Not because I was weakening, but because I wasn't going to waste good food or let a plant die. But I wasn't going to call them either. The next attempt came from Jennifer. Tuesday evening, my security system alerted me to movement in my driveway. This time it was Jennifer's minivan, and she wasn't alone. She had all 3 kids with her. My stomach dropped. Using the kids as emotional weapons was a new low, even for my family. I watched as Jennifer got out and helped her 8-year-old daughter, 6-year-old son, and 3-year-old baby out of their car seats. She walked them up to my front door, the baby in her arms, the other 2 holding her hands. "Aunt Linda," my niece called out when Jennifer rang the doorbell. "Mommy says you have a new house." "Can we see it?" my nephew added. "Mommy says it has a big backyard." I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. This was emotional manipulation at its finest. Jennifer knew I loved those kids. She knew seeing them on my doorstep would be the hardest thing for me to resist. "Linda, I know you're in there." Jennifer's voice was softer than our parents had been, more wounded. "The kids want to see their aunt. They don't understand why you won't see them anymore." "Aunt Linda, are you mad at us?" my niece asked, and my heart broke a little. I wanted to open that door. I wanted to hug those kids and show them my house and let them play in the backyard. But I knew that's exactly what Jennifer was counting on. She was using her children's innocent love for me as a weapon to break down my boundaries. "Kids," Jennifer said, loud enough for me to hear, "Aunt Linda is going through a difficult time right now. She's forgotten what it means to be family." Forgotten what it means to be family. Because setting boundaries was the same as abandoning family in Jennifer's mind. "Is she sick?" my nephew asked. "In a way, honey, she's forgotten how to love the people who love her." I had to leave the room. I couldn't listen to Jennifer poison her children against me while using them to try to manipulate me. I went upstairs to my bedroom and put on noise-canceling headphones until my security app showed me they were gone. They left a drawing from my niece, a crayon picture of our family, with me standing apart from everyone else with a sad face. The words, "We miss you, Aunt Linda," were written across the top in my nephew's careful printing. That drawing almost broke me, almost made me call Jennifer and apologize for whatever she wanted me to apologize for. Almost made me agree to whatever plan they had for my house and my life. But then I remembered something my therapist had told me years ago when I was dealing with a toxic work situation. When someone uses your love against you, they're showing you that your well-being is less important to them than getting what they want. Jennifer wasn't protecting her children from a family conflict. She was using them as weapons in it. She was teaching them that Aunt Linda was the bad guy. Because she wouldn't let them move into her house, she was prioritizing her housing solution over my relationship with her kids. That's when I knew I was making the right choice, no matter how much it hurt. The attempts continued for weeks, sometimes together, sometimes separately. Mom would drive by slowly, probably hoping to catch me in the yard. Dad would leave voicemails on my work phone before I asked HR to block those numbers too. Jennifer posted passive-aggressive Facebook statuses about family loyalty and how some people forget where they came from when they get a little success. Extended family members kept reaching out, cousins, aunts, uncles, all convinced they could be the one to talk sense into me. All convinced that if they just explained the situation from their perspective, I'd realize I was being unreasonable. But here's what none of them understood. I wasn't angry about being asked to help Jennifer. If she had called me and said, "Linda, I'm having trouble with housing," Could you help me figure out some options? I would have helped. I would have looked at apartments with her, maybe helped with a security deposit, given her advice or support. I was angry about being told what would happen with my life without being asked. I was angry about my family making decisions about my property and my future without my input. I was angry about being treated like my wants. My plans, my dreams didn't matter as much as everyone else's needs. But mostly, I was angry about the manipulation, the guilt trips, the emotional blackmail, the way they tried to make me feel selfish and ungrateful for wanting autonomy over my own life. 3 months after I cut contact, something interesting happened. I found out through my Aunt Carmen, who was still trying to mediate, that Jennifer had found a 2-bedroom apartment across town. She and Michael had renewed their lease after all, just in a different place. "See," Carmen said when she called to tell me. "She figured it out. Maybe now you can reconcile with everyone." But that just proved my point. Jennifer didn't need my house. She had options all along. She just preferred the option where someone else paid for her housing solution. When that option disappeared, she did what adults do. She handled her own situation. My parents had to help with the moving costs, which they apparently weren't thrilled about. According to Carmen, there was some tension because they'd expected me to be the solution to Jennifer's housing needs, not them. "Your father had to dip into his golf fund to help with the security deposit," Carmen told me, like this was supposed to make me feel guilty. Instead, it made me feel vindicated. They had money to help Jennifer. They just preferred to volunteer my money instead of their own. 6 months after cutting contact, my life looked completely different, and not in the ways my family had predicted. They'd warned me I'd be lonely, that I'd regret losing my family over stubbornness, that I'd realize family was more important than independence. Instead, I was thriving. Without the constant family drama, without the emergency phone calls demanding emotional or financial support, without the guilt trips and manipulation tactics, I had energy for things that actually mattered to me. I got a promotion at work, partly because I wasn't distracted by family crisis management every other week. I started dating someone I met through a hiking group, someone who respected my boundaries and thought my independence was attractive, not selfish. I redecorated my house exactly how I wanted it. I turned the spare bedroom into a home office with a reading nook. I planted the garden I dreamed of. I hosted dinner parties for friends who appreciated being invited instead of assuming they were entitled to my space. My mental health improved dramatically. I didn't realize how much stress I'd been carrying from constantly managing family expectations and drama until it was gone. I slept better. I stopped getting tension headaches. I actually enjoyed my weekends instead of dreading phone calls about who needed what from me. The silence was peaceful instead of lonely. My house felt like a sanctuary instead of a resource to be managed and distributed to family members. Other family members started reaching out, not to convince me to reconcile, but to understand how I'd done it. My cousin Melissa, who'd been getting pressured to quit her job to take care of our aging grandmother, asked for advice about setting boundaries with family expectations. "They keep saying it's my responsibility because I'm single and don't have kids," she told me. "But I love my job and I'm not ready to give up my career to be a full-time caregiver." "Then don't," I told her. "Being single doesn't make you the family's default solution to everyone else's problems. Being child-free doesn't mean your time and energy are worth less than everyone else's. She ended up hiring a professional caregiver for grandmother and contributing financially instead of sacrificing her career. The family was upset at first, but they adapted. Because when you stop being the path of least resistance, people find other paths. My friend Sarah, who'd watched this whole drama unfold, told me something that stuck with me. You didn't lose your family over a house, Linda. You discovered that your family's love came with conditions that you weren't willing to accept. And she was right. Real love doesn't demand that you sacrifice your dreams, your independence, your financial security, or your mental health to prove your loyalty. Real love doesn't use guilt, manipulation, or emotional blackmail to get what it wants. Real love respects boundaries. Real love celebrates your success instead of trying to turn it into someone else's solution. Real love asks before it takes and accepts no as an answer. I learned that breaking toxic cycles isn't selfish, it's necessary. Not just for me, but for future generations. I'm not going to teach my future children that family love means sacrificing yourself for other people's poor planning. I'm not going to model relationships where manipulation and guilt are acceptable tools for getting what you want. A year later, I got a wedding invitation, not from my family, from my cousin Melissa, who'd successfully set her own boundaries and was marrying someone who supported her career goals. "Thank you," she wrote in her personal note. "Watching you stand up for yourself gave me permission to do the same. I'm marrying someone who loves my independence, not someone who wants to control it." That's when I realized the real value of what I'd done. It wasn't just about protecting my house or my money or my peace of mind. Though all of those things mattered, it was about modeling what healthy boundaries look like. It was about showing other people in my family that you don't have to sacrifice your entire life to prove you love someone. I still think about my niece and nephew sometimes. I hope someday, when they're older, they'll understand that Aunt Linda wasn't the villain in their family story. I hope they'll learn that adults are responsible for solving their own problems, not forcing other family members to solve them. I hope they'll grow up knowing that love doesn't come with conditions and expectations that require you to give up your dreams, and if they ever need an example of what it looks like to choose self-respect over family pressure, they'll know where to find me. In my beautiful house, living my chosen life, surrounded by people who love me without trying to control me. Because that's what real family looks like. And sometimes you have to lose the family you were born into to find the family you deserve.